They call me Leo, the family's reliable ghost. It wasn't a nickname I chose, of course. It was one I earned through decades of silent, thankless service. I'm the one who manages Mom's complicated medication schedule, a delicate dance of 7 different pills with specific timings and food requirements that no one else could be bothered to learn. I'm the one who mediates my 2 sisters' endless cyclical fights, translating their shrieking accusations into understandable feelings, until they finally, exhaustedly, forgive each other, and forget I was even there. I'm the one who tutors my nephew Kevin for his SATs, patiently explaining algebraic formulas for the 10th time until the light of understanding finally dawns in his eyes. And I'm the one who handles the taxes, the maintenance, and the tenant complaints for the family's 3 rental properties, a tangled mess of paperwork and personalities that they saw as a passive income stream, but I knew as a second full-time job. They don't see any of this as work. They see it as my role. I'm Leo. It's just what I do. I am the background process that keeps the whole family operating system from crashing, unseen, unheard, until a critical error occurs. So last month when they forgot my 40th birthday, it wasn't just an oversight, it was a system failure. It happened while they were all on a group vacation to Costa Rica, a trip I wasn't invited to. I found out from a series of brightly lit, deeply tanned photos Jessica, my older sister, posted on social media. There they were, Mom, looking happier than I'd seen her in years, Jessica and her husband smugly sipping cocktails, my younger sister Chloe, doing a yoga pose on the beach, and my nephew Kevin grinning with a surfboard. The caption read, "Family is everything." Soaking up the sun with my favorite people. My 40th birthday came and went on day 3 of their trip. My phone remained silent. Not a text, not a call, not a single solitary acknowledgement that the man who held their lives together had just crossed a major milestone. In that silence, watching the digital ghost of my own family celebrating without me, I decided to become a real ghost. I wasn't going to be angry. I wasn't going to scream or demand an apology. That would have been playing my usual part, the emotional janitor. No, this was different. This was a resignation. I changed my number, a number they'd had on speed dial for 2 decades. I set up auto replies on my email account, a crisp corporate message stating I was no longer reachable at this address. I deleted my social media profiles, erasing the last few breadcrumbs of my digital existence, and I went completely utterly offline. It's been 3 weeks. 3 weeks of glorious, uninterrupted silence on my end. On their end, however, it's been a Category 5 hurricane. I know this because I kept my old phone, my ghost line, purely as a data-gathering tool. The voicemails started as annoyances, then escalated to frantic, panicked pleas. Apparently, Mom's prescriptions have lapsed, and the pharmacy won't refill them without the doctor's reauthorization, a process I handled every 6 months. The tenants in 2 of the 3 properties are threatening to sue for breach of contract and are withholding rent because a plumbing issue has gone unfixed. And my nephew Kevin is not just failing math, he's on the verge of being kicked off the academic decathlon team. They finally see my work. They finally see the endless, invisible labor that propped up their comfortable lives. But they're about to learn a very modern, very corporate lesson. My work now comes with an invoice. The decision didn't come in a flash of anger. It wasn't a volcanic eruption of repressed resentment. It was a slow, cold crystallization of truth. It happened in my quiet apartment, the one they rarely visited, unless they needed something, surrounded by the evidence of my life's primary function. The whiteboard on my wall wasn't filled with my own goals or dreams. It was a complex matrix of Mom's medication times, color-coded by pill. The stack of folders on my desk wasn't for a personal project. It was the meticulously organized financial records for the rental properties, LLC documents, and tax filings. Even my browser history was a testament to my role. Sat math prep questions, best way to mediate sibling rivalry, landlord-tenant laws in our state. I was looking at the administrative office of a small dysfunctional corporation, and I was the unpaid, unacknowledged CEO, CFO, and entire HR department rolled into one. The moment of absolute clarity came when I saw the second round of photos from Costa Rica. Jessica had tagged the resort. Out of a morbid curiosity I couldn't suppress, I looked up the price. It was an all-inclusive luxury spot, the kind of place that costs a small fortune per person. I did a quick back-of-the-napkin calculation. For the 5 of them, For a week, it was more than my annual salary from my actual, paying job as a library archivist. The money for that trip came from the rental properties, the properties I managed, the profits I maximized, the headaches I absorbed so they could have a passive income stream. My labor had paid for the vacation I wasn't invited to, the one that made them forget my existence. It wasn't just an insult, it was an embezzlement of my life force. I didn't break down and cry, I didn't punch a wall, I just sat there in my office chair and felt, still. The anger I should have felt was replaced by something colder, heavier, and far more powerful resolve. It was like a switch had been flipped. The part of my brain that was always running a background check on their happiness, their needs, their potential problems, it just went dark. The hum of constant low-grade anxiety I'd lived with for my entire adult life simply ceased. In its place, a profound and terrifying silence, and in that silence, I began to plan my resignation, my disappearance, my haunting. Before I could become a ghost, I had to review the life I was leaving behind. It's funny how your mind protects you, sanding down the sharp edges of past hurts into a dull, manageable ache. But with my new cold clarity, I let myself remember. I forced myself to walk back through the archives of my own life, to see the pattern I had willfully ignored for so long. I remembered being 25. Jessica, always the impulsive one, had just broken up with a long-term boyfriend, and in a fit of misplaced independence, decided to use her portion of an early inheritance from our grandparents to buy a condo. She didn't read the fine print. She didn't understand the concept of a variable rate mortgage. She just liked the countertops and the walk-in closet. A year later, the rates skyrocketed, and she was facing foreclosure. I was the one who got the panicked, tearful late-night call. I wasn't a financial expert then, just a guy who knew how to read and research. I spent an entire weekend at the library, poring over books on real estate law and debt consolidation. I built a spreadsheet, charted out her income and expenses, and found a path, a narrow, difficult path, that involved refinancing with a credit union and me co-signing on the loan because her credit was shot. I presented the plan to her like a doctoral thesis. She signed where I told her to sign. The crisis was averted. Her thank you was a casual "wow, I was really freaking out there for a second. Glad you handled it, Leo." Handled it. Like I was the plumber she'd called to fix a leak. She never knew I put my own financial future on the line for her. She never asked. Then there was Chloe, my younger sister, the free spirit, the artist. Her battles weren't with money, but with Mom. Chloe's lifestyle, her rotating cast of roommates, her refusal to get a real job, her vibrant purple hair, was a constant source of friction with our very traditional mother. I remembered one fight in particular, a screaming match over Thanksgiving dinner that had sent guests fleeing. Chloe had accused Mom of trying to control her life. Mom had accused Chloe of throwing her life away. They were speaking different languages, fueled by decades of misunderstanding. I spent the next 2 days shuttling between them, not physically, but emotionally. I sat with Chloe in her chaotic studio apartment, listening to her rage and her hurt, and then reframing it for her. She's not scared of your hair, Chloe. She's scared you won't be able to take care of yourself. It's fear, not judgment. Then I'd go to Mom's, sit in her pristine living room, and listen to her tearful anxieties. She thinks you don't approve of her, Mom. She sees your worry as a criticism of who she is. I was a human bridge, absorbing the vitriol from both sides, translating it into a language the other could understand. Eventually, they had a tearful reconciliation over the phone. I heard about it from Jessica. They had made up. They were fine. My role as mediator was complete, and like a stagehand after the final curtain, I was invisible again. No one thanked me for saving the holiday or their relationship. The service was rendered, the ghost had done its job, and Kevin, my nephew, Jessica's son, a good kid, but lazy, with a mental block when it came to math. Jessica was convinced he was a genius, who was just bored. She'd hired expensive tutors, who had all given up, frustrated by his lack of effort. I stepped in, not because I'm a math whiz, but because I'm patient. I have the archivist's patience. I can sit with a problem, look at it from every angle, and find the tiny overlooked detail that makes it all make sense. For weeks, we sat at my kitchen table, wrestling with quadratic equations. I didn't just show him the formulas, I showed him the logic behind them, using analogies with video games and sports statistics. And one evening, it happened. The light bulb moment. His eyes widened and he said, "Wait, so X is just the thing you don't know yet." It was that simple. That was the key that unlocked it all for him. He went from a C to an A in 6 weeks. At the next family dinner, Jessica was boasting to everyone, "Kevin's a natural at math. He just needed to apply himself. He gets his brains from my side of the family, you know." She winked at me, as if I were in on the joke. I just smiled and took a sip of my water. These memories, and a dozen others like them, flooded back. They weren't just instances of me being helpful. They were transactions where my time, my energy, my expertise, and my emotional stability were the currency, and I was the only one paying. The Costa Rica trip wasn't the sickness, it was the symptom of a disease that had been festering for years. My invisibility was a pre-existing condition. The voicemails started on a Tuesday, about a week after I'd vanished. The first one was from Jessica. It was casual, almost breezy. "Hey Leo, it's me. Listen, Mrs. Henderson in 2B is complaining about her sink again. Can you give her a call? The number's on the fridge. K, thanks, bye." It wasn't a question, it was a directive, a task delegated. I listened to it and felt nothing. A day later, another one from her, the tone slightly less breezy. "Leo, did you call Mrs. Henderson? She just called me again, and she was kind of yelling, 'Call me back.'" Then came Chloe. "Hey bro, quick question. I'm trying to do my quarterly estimated taxes, and I can't remember the password for the software you set up for me. Text it to me when you get a sec." A day passed. Her next message was tighter, laced with an unfamiliar thread of panic. "Leo, this is serious. The deadline is tomorrow. I need the password. And also, Mom is asking for you. She said her pill organizer is almost empty, and she can't remember the name of that new heart medication. Why aren't you answering your phone?" The true catalyst, the moment my resolve hardened from a solid into a diamond, was the third voicemail from Jessica. Her voice was strained, high-pitched. "Leo, where are you? I'm not kidding. The tenants from 3A just sent me a picture of a massive water stain on their ceiling, and they're saying the unit above them is leaking. That's the one with the new couple. I don't have their number. You have all the files, and Mom is a wreck. She went to the pharmacy, and they said her prescriptions have lapsed. They need a new authorization from Dr. Miller, and the office won't talk to her. They said they always deal with you. What is going on? This isn't funny. You are the one who handles this stuff. Call me now." I played that last message 3 times. The words echoed in the quiet of my new Spartan apartment. "You are the one who handles this stuff." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "We're worried about you." But an accusation, an indictment. How dare the machine stop working? How dare the ghost abandon its haunting grounds? They didn't see a person who was missing. They saw a function that was failing. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just going to stay away. I was going to send them a bill for services rendered. The ghost was about to become a consultant. A ghost needs a new haunting ground. My first week of freedom was less a vacation and more a strategic relocation. I was an archivist by trade, organization, and meticulous planning are in my DNA. I didn't just run away. I executed a pre-planned extraction. I had a go bag ready for years, not for a disaster, but for a moment just like this. It contained cash, a burner phone, a laptop wiped clean, and a hard drive. That hard drive was my real secret weapon. On it was a mirror image of every digital file I managed for the family, every lease agreement, every tax return, every contact number for every plumber and electrician, every password, every scanned medical document. My brain, digitized and portable. I found a small furnished apartment in a city 100 miles away. It was a sterile, anonymous place in a large complex with a name like the Aspire or the Summit, the kind of place where no one makes eye contact in the elevator. It was perfect. I paid 3 months' rent in cash and signed the lease under my own name.
I wasn't hiding from the law, I was just hiding from them.
The next step was to build my new identity, not a false one, but a formal one. The identity of a person whose time had value. This is where my old college friend Mark came in. I hadn't seen Mark in years, but we'd kept in touch through the odd email. He'd been the other quiet, nerdy guy in our dorm, the one who preferred the library to the frat parties. While I'd channeled my meticulous nature into archiving and propping up my family, he'd channeled his into the law. He was now a partner at a boutique firm specializing in contract law and intellectual property. He was sharp, cynical, and had a finely tuned distaste for people who exploited the goodwill of others. He was the perfect ally. I called him from my new clean phone. "Mark," I said, after the initial pleasantries. "I need to hire you." There was a pause. "Hire me, Leo, what's wrong? You sound different." "I sound solvent," I replied, and the corner of my mouth twitched into a smile. "I'm starting a business, and I need you to draw up the initial service agreement and help me structure the LLC. I spent the next hour laying it all out for him. The decades of unpaid labor, the forgotten birthday, the Costa Rica trip, the frantic voicemails. I expected sympathy, maybe some platitudes about how awful families can be. Instead, Mark started laughing. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated delight. "Leo, you magnificent bastard," he said, the glee evident in his voice. "This is the most beautifully passive-aggressive, legally sound revenge scheme I have ever heard of. I'm in. Pro bono for the setup. I want to see their faces." "It's not about revenge, Mark," I said, trying to sound convincing even to myself. "It's about restructuring a dysfunctional organization." "Right," he said, a grin in his voice. "And the Hindenburg was a minor lighter-than-air vehicle incident. Don't worry, I get it. This isn't personal, it's just business. The best kind of business." He then shared a quick story that made me realize I'd called the right person. His own brother, a serial entrepreneur with a string of failed startups, had once tried to get Mark to do all the legal work for a new venture in exchange for a small slice of the equity. Mark had listened patiently and then sent his brother his standard retainer agreement and a bill for the 1-hour consultation. The brother had been outraged. They hadn't spoken for 6 months. "Best 6 months of my life," Mark had concluded. He finally realized my time wasn't a free-for-all family resource. "We're fine now. He pays his bills." Mark's validation was like a shot of adrenaline. For the next week we worked together over encrypted video calls. He was brilliant. He guided me through the process of forming Leo Corp Management, LLC. It sounded serious, official. Then came the masterpiece, the Family and Asset Management Services Agreement. It wasn't just an invoice. It was a 20-page document that read like a corporate takeover bid. We broke down every task I performed into a service category: medication and healthcare logistics management. This included liaising with doctors, managing pharmacy refills, scheduling appointments, and maintaining medical records. We researched the market rate for a private healthcare advocate. It was staggering. We set my rate at a conservative $75 an hour. Adolescent academic support and tutoring. We listed the hours I spent with Kevin, the prep materials I'd developed, the progress he'd made. We pegged that at $50 an hour, a bargain compared to the professionals Jessica had hired: interfamily, conflict resolution and mediation. Mark had a field day with this one. He called it emotional labor services. We billed it at the same rate as a licensed family therapist, $150 an hour. We estimated the hours conservatively, but they still added up to a shocking figure over the years. But the real leverage, the core of the whole operation, was the section titled Property Portfolio and LLC Administration. This was my secret weapon, the hidden foundation I had laid years ago, not out of malice, but out of foresight. When they had inherited the 3 properties from a great-aunt, they just wanted the checks. I was the one who saw the liability. I was the one who spent months researching asset protection. On my own initiative, I had structured the ownership in a way they never bothered to understand. The properties weren't in their names. They were owned by 3 separate single-purpose LLCs. And I, Leo, was the sole managing member and registered agent for all three. They were the beneficiaries, the silent partners who received the profits, but I held all the legal authority. I was the only one who could sign checks on the accounts, execute leases, or authorize major repairs. I had explained it to them once, years ago, and their eyes had glazed over. Whatever you think is best, Leo. You're the numbers guy. They had no idea that their ownership was entirely dependent on my consent and my signature. Mark almost fell out of his chair when I explained the LLC structure. Leo, you're not just the ghost, you're the goddamn puppet master. They can't do anything. They can't sell, they can't refinance, they can't even legally sign a new lease without you. If they try to dissolve the LLCs, it's a legal quagmire that would tie up the properties in court for years. It's beautiful, it's a fortress. The agreement stipulated that Leo Corp management would continue to provide these services for a monthly retainer, plus hourly rates for any work exceeding the retainer. It also included a past services acknowledgement clause, a carefully worded section that didn't demand back pay but calculated the market value of my last 5 years of service, a 6-figure number, and presented it as a debt of gratitude that could be forgiven upon the signing of the new agreement. It was a master stroke of psychological and legal leverage. By the end of the second week, everything was in place. The LLC was registered. The business bank account was open. The service agreement was drafted, polished, and ready to deploy. I had spent my life archiving the past. Now, I had weaponized it. I sat in my silent apartment, the 20-page document glowing on my laptop screen. The frantic voicemails were still coming in on the old phone, a chorus of rising panic. The tenants were screaming. The bank was calling. Mom was running out of pills. The system was crashing, and the ghost, the system administrator, was about to send his terms for a reboot. The third week was a symphony of their unraveling, and I had a front row seat. I had set up a specific rule on my old phone. It wouldn't ring, but it would transcribe all voicemails to text and forward them to a secure email address I'd created. It was like reading the ship's log from the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. The entries shifted from annoyance to fear, from fear to pure, unadulterated panic. Jessica, day 15. Leo, this is officially not funny anymore. Mrs. Henderson is threatening to call the housing authority, and the tenants in 3A, the ones with the leak. They've moved into a hotel and just sent me an email saying they expect us to pay for it and will be deducting it from their rent, which, by the way, they are putting into escrow. I tried to call the plumber you always use, and he said he only takes work orders from you because you always pay on time. What does that even mean? I tried to access the rental bank account online to pay him, and your password doesn't work. Did you change it? Call me back. I'm serious. Chloe, day 17. Leo, Mom is a mess. A real mess. She missed 3 days of her beta blockers, and she felt dizzy this morning. I tried to call Dr. Miller's office myself, and they treated me like I was a criminal. They said they have a HIPAA authorization for you and only you. They need you to sign a form to authorize them to speak with me, or Jessica. Where are you to sign the form? I had to take Mom to an urgent care clinic just to get a temporary prescription, and it cost a fortune. She's crying all the time. She thinks you're gone. This is cruel, Leo. Whatever we did, it can't be this bad. The guilt was a dull phantom limb pain. I felt a pang for my mother, but it was immediately cauterized by the cold fire of my resolve. This was a controlled demolition. For a new structure to be built, the old one had to come down, and my mother, unfortunately, was a load-bearing wall in that rotten structure. To save her, I had to let her feel the tremor. The apex of their panic arrived in the form of a joint voicemail, clearly from a speakerphone. Jessica's sharp accusatory tone was the lead vocal. Leo, it's Jessica and Chloe. We're at Mom's. We just got a notice of default from the bank for the property on Elm Street. They're saying the mortgage payment is 15 days late. I tried to do a wire transfer, but it said the account has insufficient funds. How is that possible? That property brings in $4,000 a month. Where is the money, Leo?
Chloe's voice cut in, softer but laced with the same fear. And the tenants from 3A did it. They hired a lawyer. We got a certified letter today. They're suing the LLC for negligence and demanding damages. A lawyer, Leo. What do? We don't even know who the lawyer for the LLC is. I thought, sipping my coffee. You're talking to him. It was time. The orchestra of their chaos had reached its crescendo. It was time for the conductor to make his appearance. I didn't call them. I didn't text them. A ghost doesn't use the phone. A ghost sends a message from the other side. My first move was clinical, silent, and devastating. I logged into the master bank account for the rental properties, the central holding account where all the rent was deposited before I distributed the profits. They didn't even know it existed. They only saw the smaller individual property accounts I let them have viewing access to. I transferred every last cent from those 3 operating accounts into the central holding account, which only my name was on. The balance in the accounts they could see dropped to 0. Then I gave Mark the green light. Send it, was all I wrote in the email. Mark, with the vicious efficiency I was coming to admire, didn't just email the Leo Corp Management Services Agreement. He sent it via a bonded courier service that required a signature upon receipt. A copy to Jessica, as the eldest, a copy to Chloe, and a copy to my mother's address. He also sent a separate crisply worded letter from his firm's letterhead to the lawyer representing the tenants in 3A. The letter stated that our client, the managing member of the LLC, had been unaware of the maintenance issue due to a communications breakdown, and that he had retained our firm to rectify the situation immediately. It was a move that simultaneously asserted my authority and cut my sisters off at the knees. I was now communicating with their legal opponent, positioning myself as the responsible party. The reaction was almost instantaneous. About an hour after the courier's delivery confirmation hit my inbox, the ghost phone started vibrating so hard on my desk it almost fell off. It was a series of rapid-fire calls, one after another, from Jessica, then Chloe, then Jessica, again. I let them all go to voicemail. I needed them to read the document first. I needed them to sit with the cold, hard 20-page reality of it. Finally, a text message from an unknown number appeared on my new phone. It was Jessica. She must have gotten my new number from Mark, a calculated part of our plan. The text was a masterpiece of sputtering indignation. I have a 20-page document here that says you want to charge us for being a son and a brother. This is a joke, right? Some kind of sick, twisted 40th birthday prank. Because it's not funny. You emptied the bank accounts. The mortgage is due. Are you trying to destroy this family? I read the text, took a slow, deliberate sip of my now cold coffee, and typed my reply. It was the first direct contact I'd had with any of them in 3 weeks. It is not a joke. It is a business proposal. We can discuss the terms on a conference call at 10 a.m. tomorrow. My lawyer will be present. I didn't add an "I love you." I didn't add a "we need to talk." I signed it simply, Leo, CEO, Leo Corp Management. The power shift wasn't a gradual transfer. It was a seismic event, a dam breaking. The conference call was the flood. At precisely 10 a.m., I dialed the number Mark had provided. He was already on the line. "Morning, boss," he said, his voice dripping with professional cheer. "Ready to negotiate the terms of your hostile takeover? It's a friendly merger." I corrected him, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a genuine smile. My family joined the call a minute late, a chaotic clatter of unmuted phones. Jessica spoke first, her voice tight with a fury that was clearly warring with a desperate need for my help. "Leo, is that you? What is this? What have you done?" "Good morning, Jessica." "Chloe, Mom," I said, my voice calm and even. It was the voice I used at the library when dealing with a particularly agitated patron. "Thank you for joining this call. You've already met my legal counsel, Mark, who is also on the line to facilitate our discussion." "Legal counsel?" Chloe shrieked. "You have a lawyer against your own family." "I am the managing member of 3 LLCs currently facing legal and financial jeopardy." I stated the words, feeling solid and real. It would be irresponsible not to have counsel present, as you've all now seen from the proposal sent yesterday by Leo Corp Management. My role within the family's business ventures has become untenable in its previous unstructured form. This call is to discuss the formalization of that role moving forward. Jessica let out a humorless, choked laugh. Proposal? You mean a ransom note? You're demanding we pay you a retainers to do the things you've always done, to take care of your own mother. This was the first attack, the appeal to guilt. I was ready for it. Let's be clear, I said, my tone unyielding. Leo Corp's proposal covers professional services, property management, financial administration, and legal compliance for the LLC. These are business functions. As for Mom's care, I have already taken the liberty of researching and engaging a highly rated third-party geriatric care management service. They will handle her medication, coordinate with her doctors, and provide weekly reports. Their invoice will be sent to you and Chloe, to be split between you. My love for my mother is not a line item. The labor I performed, however, now is.
There was a stunned silence on their end. I could almost hear the gears grinding in their heads, trying to process this new alien version of me. The ghost was gone. In his place was this cold, efficient stranger who spoke in corporate jargon. Chloe found her voice first, and it was pleading. Leo, come on. This is crazy. We're sorry about your birthday. We were just so caught up with the trip, and we're sorry, okay? We're so sorry. Can't we just go back to how things were? Just turn the bank accounts back on, and we can all talk about this over dinner. The appeal to emotion. The classic reset button. I let the silence hang for a moment before I answered. No, I said, the single word landing like a stone. We cannot go back. How things were was a system that resulted in my labor being so invisible that my own family took a vacation, paid for by that labor, and forgot my 40th birthday. How things were is a failed business model. We are now discussing the new model. Jessica, ever the pragmatist when her own finances were on the line, switched tactics. She tried to take control. Okay, fine. You want to be a consultant. Let's talk about these ridiculous fees. $150 an hour for conflict resolution. That's insane. Mark's voice cut in, smooth as glass. Actually, Miss Peterson, that is the standard market rate for a certified mediator, which is the function Leo was performing. All of the rates proposed by Leo Corp are at or below industry standards for the tri-state area. We have the data to support that should you require it. Furthermore, the retainer model proposed is actually a significant discount compared to paying for these services a la carte. Then came the threat. This is extortion, Jessica hissed. We own those properties. We'll just dissolve the LLCs and get our own manager. We'll see you in court. This was the moment. The checkmate. I leaned back in my chair and let Mark handle it. I would advise strongly against that course of action, Mark said, his tone shifting from helpful to dangerously sharp. As you'll note in the LLC operating agreements, which Leo has copies of, as the registered agent, any move to involuntarily dissolve the entities requires a unanimous vote of all members, including the managing member. That's Leo. Should you attempt to do so without his consent, he would be legally obligated to file an injunction to protect the assets of the LLCs from mismanagement. The properties would be frozen, the income would cease, the mortgages would default. Your legal battle would be with him, and it would last for years and cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, all while the assets you're fighting over are bleeding value. Or, he paused for dramatic effect, you can sign the agreement, the accounts are made solvent within the hour, the pending lawsuit is handled, and your income stream is restored. The choice is, of course, yours. The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a lifetime of being underestimated crashing down around them. It was the sound of their powerlessness. They were trapped, they were cornered, and the ghost was holding the key to the cage. The silence on the conference call stretched for a full minute. It was a dense, heavy silence, filled with the unspoken fury and dawning horror of my family as they processed the checkmate move Mark had just laid out. Jessica was the first to break, and her voice was thin, brittle, stripped of all its former authority. You planned this. You set this all up years ago. No. I corrected her, my voice devoid of any emotion. I didn't plan for this. I planned for competence. I set up a structure to protect the family assets from liability and to manage them efficiently. It's not my fault that none of you ever bothered to read the documents or understand how your own business worked. You outsourced your responsibility. I am now simply formalizing the cost of that outsourcing. My mother, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke. Her voice was a wavering, tear-filled whisper. Leo, my boy, what happened to you? What happened to my sweet boy who always took care of his mother? The guilt, that familiar phantom pain tried to assert itself, but this time, I was ready. That sweet boy turned 40, Mom, I said, my voice softening just a fraction, but not yielding. He turned 40 alone, while the family he dedicated his life to was on a vacation he paid for but wasn't invited to. That boy is gone, but the man who is here still loves you. That's why I've arranged for professional, reliable care for you, care that doesn't depend on my mood or my presence, care that will never forget to refill your prescriptions. Your daughters will be handling the bill. I could hear Chloe start to sob quietly in the background. It wasn't a manipulative cry, it was the sound of genuine, dawning comprehension. Oh my God, Leo, she whispered. He's right, Jess, what did we do? Jessica, however, was not one for moral epiphanies when her back was against the wall. So that's it, she spat. You just hold a gun to our heads. We either pay your ransom, or you burn the whole thing down. I'm not the one holding the gun, Jessica, I replied calmly. I'm the one offering you a fire extinguisher while the house is on fire. A fire, I might add. That started because the smoke detector was ignored for years. The agreement is non-negotiable. You have until 5 p.m. today to sign it and return it to Mark's office. If you do, I will have the funds transferred to cover the mortgage on Elm Street by 5:30. I will contact the plumber and have the leak in 3A fixed by tomorrow morning. I will have Mark's office handle all communications with the tenant's lawyer. The system will be restored. If you do not, then I will instruct my lawyer to begin the process of legally protecting the LLCs from your attempts to interfere with them, and you can explain to the bank and the courts why you let the properties go into foreclosure. The choice is yours. I didn't wait for a reply. Mark, I believe we're done here, I said. Thank you for your time, everyone, and I disconnected the call. I sat in the silence of my apartment, my heart hammering in my chest. It was done. The confrontation I had both dreaded and craved for my entire adult life was over. I had stood my ground. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't cried. I hadn't begged for an apology. I had simply presented them with the consequences of their own actions, packaged in a legally ironclad document. The afternoon was agonizing. I paced my small living room, checking my email every 5 minutes. Had I pushed too hard? Would their pride be too great? Would they actually choose to burn everything down just to spite me? At 4:47 p.m., an email from Mark arrived. The subject line was a single word: signed. Attached was a scanned PDF of the Leo Corp Management Services Agreement. On the final page were 3 signatures. Jessica's was an angry, jagged slash of ink. Chloe's was wobbly and stained, as if tears had fallen on the paper, and my mother's was a frail, shaky script that looked nothing like her usual confident handwriting. I sank into my chair, a wave of something I couldn't quite name washing over me. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't happiness. It was a profound, bone-deep sense of vindication. It was the feeling of a massive, lifelong weight being lifted from my shoulders. I logged into the master bank account. I made the transfers. I called the plumber. I sent an email to Kevin with some notes for his upcoming math test, with a subject line: tutoring session 1 hour, and CC'd Jessica. Then I opened a new bank transfer window. I typed in the amount of the first monthly retainer fee from the agreement, and transferred it from the LLC holding account to my new personal Leo Corp business account. The numbers appeared on my screen, black and real. The ghost had just gotten his first paycheck. The new reality settled in over the next few months, not with a bang but with the quiet hum of a well-oiled machine. My relationship with my family was now entirely transactional, conducted through emails, calendar invites, and invoices. It was colder, more distant, and paradoxically more respectful than it had ever been.
My communications with Jessica were now exclusively about the properties. She would forward me a tenant complaint, and I would reply with a numbered work order and an estimate for the cost. I created a shared online portal where they could view income statements, maintenance expenses, and profit distributions. They were now informed partners in a business, not just passive recipients of its benefits. The mystery was gone, and with it, their plausible deniability. They saw the numbers. They saw the work. Kevin still got his tutoring. We met twice a week via Zoom. At the end of each month, an invoice from Leo Corp was sent to Jessica. She paid it without comment. Our sessions were more focused now, less familial, but Kevin was thriving. He aced his SATs. In one of our last sessions, he looked at me through the camera and said, "Hey Uncle Leo, thanks, for real. I wouldn't have gotten that score without you." It was the most direct acknowledgement of my effort I'd ever received from any of them, and it had taken a legally binding contract to make it happen. Chloe and I had the most surprising transformation. After a month of stilted, formal emails, she called me on my new phone. "I'm not calling about the properties," she said quickly, as if afraid I'd hang up. I wanted to say I'm sorry, not just for the birthday, for everything. We treated you like a utility, like water or electricity. We just assumed you'd always be there, flowing, and we never thought about the source. I'm sorry." I believed her. Our relationship started to slowly rebuild, but on new terms. We talked about her art, about my new life. We never talked about the contract. It was the invisible fence that kept our new, healthier relationship in its proper yard. My mother was the most difficult part of the new equation. The geriatric care service was as I'd known it would be, ruthlessly efficient. Her medications were always on time. Her appointments were never missed. She was safe, she was healthy, but she was lonely. I arranged for the service to include a daily companion visit, and I paid for that part of the bill myself, out of my own pocket. I called her twice a week, at a scheduled time. Our conversations were stilted at first. She would cry and ask me to come home. I would gently but firmly remind her that I was happy, and that she was being well cared for. Over time she began to accept it. She started telling me about her companion, a nice woman named Sarah. She talked about the shows they watched together. She stopped seeing me as a missing functionary and started slowly to see me as her son who lived in another city. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As for me, I found that when you spend your life as a ghost, an actual solid life feels like a miracle. The silence in my apartment was no longer terrifying, it was peaceful. The constant low-grade hum of anxiety was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. I was no longer an archivist of other people's lives. I was building my own. I used the money from my new second income to take a course in rare book restoration, a passion I'd never had the time or money to pursue. I started dating, something I'd never had the emotional energy for. I met a woman, a librarian like me, who was fascinated by my work and my story. When I told her about my family, she didn't see me as a victim. She saw me as a man who knew his own worth. On my 41st birthday, she threw me a surprise party with a handful of new friends. As I blew out the candles on my cake, surrounded by people who saw me, truly saw me, I felt a sense of peace that was worth more than any retainer fee. You know, they say you can't choose your family, and maybe that's true, but you can choose your role within it. You can choose to be the doormat, the emotional janitor, the reliable ghost, or you can choose to hand in your resignation. I was the ghost for 40 years, the invisible engine that ran the family machine. They didn't see me, but they felt my work in the smooth, easy rhythm of their lives. Now, they see my work on a monthly invoice. They see my value because it has a price tag, and it turns out respect has a cost. For them, it's a monthly retainer. For me, it was 40 years of my life. I think I got the better end of the deal. I'm not the family ghost anymore. I'm just Leo, and Leo gets his birthdays off. Thanks for sticking with me through this. If you've ever felt like the ghost in your own life, do me a favor and hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. And I really want to know, tell me in the comments, what's the one job you do for free that you absolutely deserve to get paid for? Maybe it's being the family's IT department, their therapist, or their chauffeur. Let's talk about it. And if you want to hear more stories about people finally getting the respect they've earned, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You never know when you'll need a little inspiration to send an invoice of your own.